Dearest listeners, before we embark upon a tale that will require you to fan yourselves rather more vigorously than usual, this author must beg your customary indulgence. If these chronicles bring you pleasure, and this particular one promises pleasures of a most scandalous nature, do favor this humble narrator with your likes. Subscribe to ensure future tales of impropriety always find you, and leave your thoughts below. This author is most eager to learn from which corner of our wicked world you listen. Now then, gentle listeners, ensure you are quite alone for this telling, for what follows is not for innocent ears. Our story begins with a secret that could destroy half the marriages in London. Every Thursday afternoon, while their husbands believe them to be at charitable committees, 12 of society's most respectable matrons gather for an altogether different purpose. But I am, as always, getting ahead of myself. Let us begin properly, with a marriage as cold as January frost, and a widow's heart as hot as August flame. Lady Margaret Hollingsworth, dearest listeners, was dying by degrees, and everyone could see it except the one person who should have cared, her husband. At 32, she remained one of London's great beauties. Raven hair that captured light like midnight water, eyes the color of spring violets, and a figure that, despite 12 years of marriage, still caused young men to walk into lampposts when she passed. But beauty, as this author has often observed, can be its own prison when it adorns an empty life. The Comte Victor Hollingsworth was, by society's standards, an exemplary husband. He had never struck her, rarely raised his voice, and provided her with a household budget that would make most wives weep with envy. He simply had one small failing. He found his wife approximately as interesting as wallpaper, and treated her accordingly. At 62, the Comte's passions were reserved for his hunting dogs, his wine cellar, and the parliamentary debates where he could pontificate about the moral decline of England's youth. His visits to his wife's bedchamber had ceased entirely 3 years ago, after he had done his duty by siring an heir. Not that Margaret mourned those brief, apologetic encounters that had all the passion of a legal transaction. This author recalls watching Margaret at the Stanwix Ball last season, standing beside her husband as he discussed import tariffs for 45 minutes with Lord Cheswick, never once acknowledging her presence. She had perfected the art of appearing engaged while her mind traveled to distant shores, or perhaps to darker, more intimate places that would shock her tedious husband. She had tried, God knows she had tried. The first year of marriage, she had attempted to engage him in conversation about books, about art, about anything beyond household accounts. He had patted her hand and told her not to trouble her pretty head with such matters. By the 3rd year, she had stopped trying. By the 5th, she had stopped feeling. By the 10th, she had been ready to throw herself from Westminster Bridge just to feel something, even if it was only the Thames's cold embrace. Then Lady Evelyn Dashwood had saved her life with 7 simple words whispered at a particularly tedious musicale. There is another way to survive this. Enter Mr. William Thorne, though his entrance into our tale comes later than his entrance into grief. At 28, William Thorne was what society paradoxically called a fortunate unfortunate. Fortune had blessed him with wealth. His father's shipping enterprise had made the family rich beyond measure. Misfortune had cursed him with no title, making him acceptable for dinners, but not for daughters. Fortune had given him the face of a Renaissance angel, golden hair that curled despite his best efforts, gray eyes that seemed to hold storms, and a mouth that suggested he knew secrets about pleasure that proper ladies shouldn't imagine. Misfortune had taken his wife. Alice Thorne had died 8 months ago, coughing blood onto white linen while William held her hand and begged God for a miracle that never came. They had been married only 2 years, a love match that had scandalized both families. She had been the daughter of an earl, he merely rich trade, but they hadn't cared. This author had seen them dance at their wedding, looking at each other as if the rest of the world had ceased to exist. Now William moved through London society like a ghost at a feast. Mothers pushed their daughters at him. A rich widower was prime hunting, but he looked through them all as if they were glass. He ate without tasting, danced without feeling, smiled without meaning. This author had observed him at numerous events, always leaving early, always alone, always with that particular emptiness in his eyes that suggested he was merely enduring until he could properly join his wife. He had no idea that Margaret Hollingsworth watched him from across ballrooms, recognizing a kindred spirit in suffering. She saw past his beauty to the bone-deep exhaustion beneath. He was drowning in grief while she was suffocating in matrimony, and this author knew, with the instinct that comes from years of observation, that when they finally collided, the explosion would be magnificent. The revelation of the Thursday Club, gentle listeners, came about through purest accident, though this author suspects Lady Dashwood had been planning Margaret's recruitment for months. It was a Thursday in September, unseasonably warm, when Margaret told her husband she was attending a meeting of the Ladies' Botanical Society. The Comte, deep in his newspaper, merely grunted approval. He appreciated her involvement in respectable charitable work. It reflected well on him. The address Lady Dashwood had provided led not to any charitable institution, but to an elegant townhouse in Grosvenor Gardens, its windows discreetly curtained, its entrance shadowed by overgrown ivy. Margaret almost turned back twice, but curiosity and desperate boredom propelled her forward. The butler who answered was unusual, a woman dressed in men's clothing, with knowing eyes and a slight smile. She led Margaret up 2 flights of stairs to a set of double doors, from behind which came the shocking sound of feminine laughter. Real laughter, not the tinkling performance required at social gatherings. The doors opened onto a scene that would have given the Comte apoplexy. 12 ladies, all of whom Margaret recognized from the highest circles of society, were arranged around the room in various states of shocking dishabille. Corsets had been loosened, shoes discarded, hair unpinned. Lady Dashwood reclined on a chaise, smoking a Turkish cigarette. Mrs. Clara Montague, whose husband owned half the banks in London, was dealing cards with the expertise of a professional sharp. Lady Frances Hedgley was reading aloud from a French novel, pausing occasionally to translate particularly scandalous passages. But most shocking of all was the alcohol. Not sherry or ratafia, those insipid drinks deemed suitable for ladies, but whiskey, brandy, proper wine that wasn't watered down. They were drinking like men, smoking like men, laughing like men. No, this author corrects herself. They were laughing like women who had remembered how to be human. Lady Dashwood rose with feline grace, approaching Margaret with a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. She explained that the Thursday Club had one rule: absolute honesty. Within these walls, they could speak truths that would destroy them outside. They could admit to hating their husbands, mourning their freedom, hungering for things proper ladies shouldn't even know existed. Margaret took the whiskey and drank it in one burning swallow. Then, for the first time in 12 years, she told the truth. She spoke of nights lying beside a snoring stranger who had never once tried to know her, of the weight of his arm across her waist feeling like a shackle, of watching young lovers in Hyde Park and wanting to scream at them to run, of the shameful dreams that came when she finally slept, dreams where faceless men did things to her that her husband had never imagined possible. The ladies listened without judgment. Then, one by one, they shared their own truths. Lady Weatherford's husband hadn't touched her in 5 years, preferring his valet. Mrs. Price had taken a lover, her music teacher, and the guilt was eating her alive, even as the pleasure kept her sane. Lady Hedgley wrote erotic stories under a false name and had them published in France. By the evening's end, Margaret felt more alive than she had in a decade. She had found her tribe, women who understood that marriage, for most of them, was a prettily decorated prison. It was her 4th Thursday when fate intervened in the form of William Thorne. The ladies were deep in their cups and confidences when the door burst open. This author has pieced together what happened from various sources, all of whom swear their version is true. William Thorne stood in the doorway, looking like he'd been struck by lightning. He was carrying a portfolio of legal documents, having been told by his clerk that the property owner would be at this address at this time. He had entered through the garden door, assuming a business meeting, climbing the stairs toward the voices, and walking into what must have seemed like a fever dream. The scene that greeted him was thus. Lady Dashwood stood on a table, demonstrating a dance she had learned in Paris that no respectable woman should know. Mrs. Montague was teaching Lady Weatherford to blow smoke rings. And Margaret, oh, this author savors this detail. Margaret was lying on the carpet, shoes off, hair completely unpinned and spreading like spilled ink, reading aloud from Lady Hedgeley's latest French acquisition, her voice dropping to a husky whisper for the most scandalous parts. Oh my, gentle listeners, even this author requires a moment here. The image of Lady Margaret, that pillar of supposed propriety, sprawled on the floor reading French erotica with the voice of a courtesan. Well, let us just say that Mr. Thorne's reaction was entirely understandable. Now, where did I put my fan? For a moment that stretched like taffy, nobody moved. Then Lady Dashwood, magnificent woman that she was, simply said, "Well, Mr. Thorne, you have two choices. You can leave immediately and forget what you've seen, or you can pour yourself a drink and join us. But if you choose the latter, you're bound by our rules, absolute honesty and absolute discretion." William's response surprised everyone, including himself. He walked to the sideboard, poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, drank it all, then said, "I haven't been properly drunk since my wife died. Perhaps it's time." What followed was extraordinary. This hard-closed man began to speak. He told them about Alice, not the sanitized version society expected, but the truth, how she had been terrified of tuberculosis, knowing it ran in her family, how she had begged him to let her die at home, not in a sanitarium, how he had held her for 3 days straight as she drowned in her own blood, singing the lullabies she would never sing to their children. He spoke of the rage that followed, at God, at her, at himself, for not saving her. Of the nights he stood at her grave begging her to haunt him just so he could see her again. Of the women his friends pushed at him, all of them pale imitations of life when he had held death in his arms and found it more honest than anything in a ballroom. When he finished, there were tears on several faces, but not pity, understanding. These women knew about grief, even if theirs was for lives never lived rather than lives lost. It was Margaret who moved first. She rose from the carpet with unconscious grace, walked to him, and took the empty glass from his shaking hands. She refilled it, then said simply, "The dead don't judge us for living, Mr. Thorne. Only the living do that." Their eyes met properly for the first time, and this author swears the temperature in the room rose 5 degrees. After that night, William became an unexpected addition to their Thursdays. Not every week, but often enough. He was their secret keeper, their male perspective, their reminder that not all men were their husbands. In return, they gave him something to anticipate beyond the grave. But it was Margaret who drew him like a flame draws a moth. This author observed them during this period at various social functions, and the change was remarkable. They would attend the same events. He could go where her husband didn't, and conduct entire conversations without speaking. A raised eyebrow from her asking if he had eaten that day. A slight nod from him saying he had tried. A twist of her mouth commenting on Lady Trentham's appalling new turban. A quickly suppressed smile agreeing with her assessment. The Comte, when he noticed William at all, approved of him. Here was a man who understood grief, who wouldn't fill his wife's head with romantic nonsense. He even suggested Margaret dance with that poor Thorne fellow at the Marchmont ball, never noticing how his wife's hands trembled as she agreed. That dance, dearest listeners, was 3 minutes of exquisite torture. They performed a perfectly proper cotillion while burning alive. Every permitted touch, hand to hand, hand to waist, sent visible shocks through both of them. Margaret later told Lady Dashwood that she could feel his heartbeat through his gloves, racing like a hunted deer. After 6 weeks of this delicious agony, William made a proposition that shocked even the Thursday Club. He found Margaret alone in the library during one of their meetings, pretending to select a book while the others played cards. He proposed that they help each other. He needed to remember how to feel something other than grief. She needed to feel anything at all, not love. Neither of them believed in that anymore, but something real, something that would prove they were still alive. A mutual exchange of sensation, nothing more. Margaret's response was to laugh, not the bitter laugh of the resigned, but the wild laugh of someone standing at the edge of a cliff. She agreed, with conditions. They would meet in secret. They would tell no one, not even the Thursday Club. And when either of them wanted to stop, they would. No questions asked. The bargain was sealed with a handshake that lasted too long and promised too much. Their first meeting was at the British Museum, after hours. William had connections. Money opened many doors and arranged for them to have the Egyptian collection to themselves. This author learned from a night watchman, well compensated for his discretion. What transpired? They walked among the artifacts of dead civilizations, discussing mortality with the kind of dark humor that only comes from intimate acquaintance with death. Margaret told him she envied the mummies, at least their imprisonment ended. William responded that he envied the pharaoh's wives who were buried with their husbands. At least they didn't have to endure sympathy visits. They were examining a sarcophagus when Margaret suddenly said she had never been kissed properly. Not with passion, only with duty or ownership. William replied that he had forgotten what desire felt like. With Alice, it had been love, which was different. They stood there, surrounded by death, and made a clinical decision to kiss. An experiment, nothing more. The kiss lasted 17 minutes. This author must pause here to note that she has timed this, and 17 minutes is an extraordinarily long time to do anything, much less kiss with such enthusiasm. One could prepare a proper pot of tea in 17 minutes. One could read 3 chapters of a sensible novel. Or apparently, one could conduct a thorough exploration of another person's mouth while surrounded by Egyptian sarcophagi. Dearest listeners, if you find yourselves growing warm, you are not alone. This author required 2 fans and a window open to December air after hearing this account. When they finally parted, both were shaking. Margaret's lips were swollen, her careful coiffure destroyed. William looked like he had been struck by lightning, twice. They fled in opposite directions without speaking, both terrified by what they had unleashed. But they met again the next week, and the next. The locations became increasingly dangerous. The abandoned box at the opera, where they sat in darkness, not touching, but feeling every breath the other took. The greenhouse at Kew Gardens after closing, where the tropical heat gave them excuse for flushed faces and damp skin. A private dining room at an unfashionable inn where they ate nothing but devoured each other with their eyes. Each meeting pushed boundaries further. He would remove her gloves with his teeth, kissing each finger as it was revealed. She would unpin her hair slowly, watching his hands clench as it tumbled free. They would read poetry to each other, not romantic verses, but the dark, sensual ones that proper people pretended didn't exist. The crisis came during the Stanwyck house party in November. This author was present and can report every delicious, terrible detail. Both had been invited, William for his fortune, Margaret with her husband who wanted to discuss hunting rights with Lord Stanwyck. They had sworn to avoid each other, knowing a country house party would make discretion impossible. For 2 days, they succeeded. Margaret played the perfect wife while her husband bored everyone at dinner. William charmed the unmarried ladies while feeling nothing. They didn't look at each other, speak to each other, acknowledge each other's existence. Then came the storm. It was one of those violent November tempests that turned day to night. The ladies were trapped in the conservatory when it began, the gentlemen out riding. Margaret had been examining orchids when the first lightning struck, so close the windows rattled. She had always been terrified of storms, a childhood trauma involving a fire started by lightning. As thunder crashed overhead, she began to shake. The other ladies were too busy shrieking about their own fears to notice Margaret slip away, seeking somewhere safe to hide. She found herself in the map room, a windowless study in the heart of the house. She was curled in a chair, hands over her ears, when William found her. He had returned early from riding, soaked to the skin, and had been heading to his room when he heard something. Instinct, perhaps, or that mysterious connection that draws lovers together. He entered without knocking. This author has reconstructed what happened next from various sources, including a maid who was definitely not listening at the door. William went to her immediately, kneeling beside her chair. When she wouldn't uncover her ears, he gently pulled her hands away, replacing them with his own. He held her head, forcing her to look at him instead of listening to the storm. They stayed like that through 3 crashes of thunder. Then, as rain lashed the windows somewhere above them, Margaret kissed him with the desperation of someone drowning. What followed was, this author must fan herself at the memory of the maid's account. They didn't make love, not technically, but what they did was almost worse. They touched everywhere that could be touched while clothed. They discovered exactly how much pleasure could be given with hands and mouths alone. They drove each other to the edge of madness and pulled back over and over until both were sobbing with frustration and need. Oh, gentle listeners, forgive this author's brief interruption, but the temperature in this narrative has risen quite dramatically, has it not? Do excuse me while I fetch my fan, the large one, from Paris, with the scandalous painting on the reverse. There, much better, though I fear even this may not be sufficient for what I must relate next. The maid's account was quite detailed. Perhaps I should open a window as well. Yes, that's better. Now, where were we? Ah yes, two people discovering that propriety's boundaries can be quite flexible. When the storm finally passed, they were on the floor, fully clothed, but completely undone. Margaret's hair was a wild tangle. William's shirt was untucked, his cravat missing entirely. Both had bite marks that would take careful concealment. It was William who spoke first, saying the words that would damn them both. I love you. God help me. I love you more than I ever loved Alice. She was my peaceful meadow. You're my hurricane. Margaret's response was to run. She fled the room, the house, pleading sudden illness. She returned to London that night, leaving her confused husband to follow later. For 3 weeks, Margaret refused to see him. She stopped attending the Thursday Club. She became the perfect wife, silent, submissive, dead inside. The Comte, this author noted, seemed pleased by her newfound docility. William, meanwhile, was falling apart in a decidedly public manner. He began drinking heavily at his club. He accepted a duel challenge from young Lord Pembroke over an imagined slight, though friends intervened before blood was shed. He was seen at a brothel, though the madam later confided to this author that he had only sat in the parlor, drinking and staring at nothing. It was Lady Dashwood who finally intervened. She cornered Margaret at the Hedgley Musicale and delivered some harsh truths. Margaret was a coward. Not for refusing an affair, that would be understandable, but for refusing to live at all. She had tasted freedom and chosen to return to her cage. She was committing slow suicide and taking William with her. That night, Margaret made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. She wrote to William, asking him to meet her one last time. Not for goodbye, they had proven they couldn't manage those, but for honesty. They met at the Thursday clubhouse, empty on a Tuesday night. This author has it from Lady Dashwood, who provided the key, that what was said there changed everything. Margaret confessed that she loved him, but couldn't be his mistress, not because of morality, but because hiding their love would kill it. She would rather live without him than have him in shadows and shame. William's response was unexpected. He didn't want her as a mistress either. He wanted her to leave her husband, weather the scandal, and marry him. He had enough money to keep them comfortable, even if society cut them. They could live in Italy, France, anywhere but this suffocating city. Margaret reminded him that the Comte would never grant a divorce. The scandal would destroy not just her, but her sister, her mother, innocents who didn't deserve the punishment. William then made a proposition that shocked even Margaret. They would wait. He would court her openly, in full view of society and her husband. Not as a lover, but as a friend. They would let the Comte see them together constantly, platonically, until he grew bored of her presence and suggested she spend more time elsewhere. They would make him think separation was his idea. It was a long game, requiring patience neither of them possessed, but it was a chance. What followed was 6 months of the most exquisite torture this author has ever witnessed. William became a regular guest at the Hollingsworth house. He discussed hunting with the Comte, who found him surprisingly knowledgeable for a tradesman's son. He brought Margaret books, respectable ones, and read to her while her husband dozed after dinner. He escorted her to exhibitions when the Comte was busy, always with perfect propriety. Society watched, fascinated. Some whispered about an affair, but there was no evidence. They were never alone, never touched beyond what propriety allowed, never looked at each other with anything but polite friendship. It was a performance worthy of Drury Lane. Only the Thursday Club knew the truth. that every proper dinner was foreplay, every polite conversation a seduction, every respectable outing an exercise in self-control that left both of them exhausted. This author observed them at the Trentham Ball, dancing a perfectly proper waltz while having an entirely different conversation with their eyes. I want to kiss you. Not here. When? Soon. I'm dying. So am I. I love you. I know. The Comte, watching them dance, actually smiled. He told Lord Cheswick that it was good for Margaret to have a friend, that Thorne's melancholy made him safe company for a married woman. The plan was working. The Comte began suggesting Margaret accept William's invitations, freeing him for his own pursuits. He even commented that she seemed happier, more settled, completely missing that she was incandescent with suppressed desire. The break came in May, at the Hollingsworth's own soirée. The Comte had insisted on hosting to celebrate some parliamentary victory. Margaret had planned every detail with mechanical precision, the perfect hostess. William was invited, of course. It would have been odd if he weren't. The evening proceeded normally until Margaret went to check on the champagne supply. She was in the wine cellar when William found her. He had seen her slip away and followed, unable to resist a moment alone after 2 months of public propriety. This author had this account from a footman who witnessed their discovery. The Comte, realizing they were both missing, went looking for his wife to parade her before some important guest. He found them in the cellar, fully clothed, but pressed against the wine racks, kissing as if the world were ending. Dear listeners, this author must confess that even she, hardened by years of observing society's scandals, felt the heat of that moment. The footman's description was quite vivid, something about the desperation of their embrace, the way they clung to each other as if trying to merge into one being, the sounds they made. Well, this author definitely needs a stronger fan, and perhaps some of that champagne they were supposedly checking on. The transformation in the Comte was terrible. Not the hot rage of a jealous husband, but the cold fury of a man whose possession had been touched. He didn't make a scene. That would have been undignified. He simply said, "My study, both of you, now." What followed in that study, this author has pieced together from various sources. The Comte gave them options. William could leave England immediately and never return, or the Comte would destroy him, not physically but financially, socially, completely. Margaret could return to being a proper wife and never see William again, or he would have her declared insane and institutionalized. Margaret's response was magnificent. She laughed, actually laughed, and told him she would rather be in Bedlam than his bed. She would rather be insane than dead inside. She would rather have one honest moment with William than a lifetime of lies with him. The Comte slapped her. Once, hard, leaving a mark that would bruise. William moved to strike him back, but Margaret stopped him. She knew violence would only give the Comte ammunition. Instead, she did something far more devastating. She told the truth. She told her husband about every mistress he'd had, thinking her too stupid to notice, about the debts he'd hidden, about the illegitimate child he was supporting in Dover. She had documented everything, and copies were with her solicitor to be released if anything happened to her. Mutual destruction or mutual freedom. Those were the real options. The divorce proceedings were the scandal of the year. This author attended every public hearing and can report that Margaret wore red to court. Scarlet woman indeed. The Comte sued for divorce on grounds of adultery. Margaret countersued on the same grounds. The evidence presented on both sides was extensive. The Thursday Club attended en masse, providing Margaret with silent support that spoke volumes. William testified that he loved Margaret, had always loved her, would always love her, and that any man who couldn't see her worth deserved to lose her. When asked if they had committed adultery, he replied that they had committed honesty, which was apparently more offensive to society. The divorce was granted. Margaret lost everything: her title, her position, her respectability. She kept only a small settlement that her father had protected in the original marriage contract. Society waited to see if William would abandon her now that she was ruined. Instead, he proposed. In public, at the opera, during intermission. This author was present and can report exactly what happened. William stood up in his box, which happened to be directly across from the Comte's, and called for silence. He announced that he wished to propose to the bravest, most honest, most passionate woman in London. He turned to Margaret, who was sitting with Lady Dashwood, and asked if she would do him the honor of becoming his wife, understanding that they would be social pariahs, but would have each other. Margaret's response: "I will marry you, William Thorne, but on one condition. We live as equals. Your money becomes our money. Your decisions become our decisions. I will not trade one master for another, even a beloved one." William's acceptance was to kiss her thoroughly, while the entire opera house erupted in shock, applause, and no small amount of envy. This author must note that she required her strongest smelling salts at this point, though whether from the scandal or the kiss itself, she cannot say. The way he kissed her, as if she were air and he had been drowning. Well, several ladies present later reported having quite torrid dreams that evening. They married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony attended only by the Thursday Club and a few brave souls who valued love over propriety. Lady Dashwood stood as witness, wearing purple in defiance of convention. This author can report that their marriage is unconventional. They maintain separate bedrooms, but sleep in neither, preferring to choose each night where they wish to be. They travel extensively, sending back reports of adventures that make the Thursday Club wild with envy. Margaret has taken up painting, terrible, passionate paintings that William treasures. William has learned to cook badly, which Margaret finds endlessly amusing. They returned to London last month, taking a house in unfashionable Bloomsbury. Their at-homes have become legendary, not for their propriety, but for their honesty. Artists, writers, reformers, and yes, even some brave society matrons attend. The Thursday Club now meets at their house, expanded to include other women who need to speak truth in safety. William sometimes joins them, the only man trusted with their secrets. The Comte has remarried, a young woman who simpers appropriately and never contradicts him. This author gives it 2 years before she's attending Thursday meetings. As for Margaret and William, this author visited them last week. They have been married a year now, and the passion has not dimmed. If anything, it has intensified. They touch constantly, not the desperate touches of the forbidden, but the casual intimacy of people who have chosen each other completely. During dinner, William mentioned that Alice would have liked Margaret. Margaret replied that her first marriage had taught her what not to want, and her second what to demand. They toasted their former spouses, one dead to them, with genuine gratitude for the lessons learned. Their happiness is not the pretty, proper happiness of society marriages. It's messier, louder, more real. They fight passionately. They reconcile, even more passionately. They live fully and without apology. This author feels compelled to mention that during her visit, she accidentally witnessed their reconciliation after a minor disagreement about the proper way to brew tea. The enthusiasm of their making up required this author to excuse herself to the garden for a full 20 minutes with her emergency fan. Some couples express affection with flowers or poetry. The Thornes apparently prefer more physical demonstrations of devotion. And so, dearest listeners, we conclude this tale of love born from mutual desperation, nurtured in secrecy, and finally flowering in scandal. It proves that sometimes the greatest rebellion is simply refusing to die quietly, that passion postponed is not passion denied, and that the best revenge against a cold marriage is a burning love. This author withdraws now, but not without noting that the Thursday Club has recently expanded to include a Tuesday chapter. The applications are extensive. It seems many wives have discovered that truth, like passion, is addictive. Until our next encounter, remember that society's rules are like corsets. They shape us into acceptable forms, but make it terribly hard to breathe. Sometimes, the only solution is to cut the stays entirely. And do, gentle listeners, ensure you have an adequate fan for our next tale. This author has it on good authority that the romance brewing between a certain widowed duchess and her supposedly prudish solicitor involves activities that would make even the Thursday Club blush. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. Your devoted chronicler, Lady Ravenswood.